So I started a program called the Compass Program, where I brought community providers to the court and actually brought men and women to the court to seek jobs, get their license corrected with the BMV if it was at all possible, so you could drive to and from work. If it's suspended by child support, we could take care of it.
Correct.
That's something I don't understand. Why they passed
Right.
a law to take a driver's license
You know what? There's
from
some very
people
good
that
one.
had to go to work.
Yeah, that's a very good
They
one.
also were suspending professional licenses.
Exactly.
They could take your law license. They could take your
and
ability to practice medicine.
I couldn't
if you
understand
were
that.
behind in your child support. Now that's something I didn't understand.
I can't understand that.
And I don't understand that system that continues to penalize you for not having money. It's no more than a debtor's prison issue. And it has become the new pipeline for men to prison. Because if you miss your child support for over 26 consecutive weeks, you can be indicted as a felon. And a lot of people don't know that. So it's another way that's leading people into the prison system.
Used to be a coal miner's daughter. Judge Teri Jameson is going to be joining us this Sunday at 3 o'clock. Judge Jameson used to be a coal miner's daughter, used to be a coal miner herself. Now she's an appeals court judge in the city of Columbus, Ohio, and now she's running to be Supreme Court Justice. Judge Teri Jameson, this Sunday, 3 o'clock, Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. We'll see you then. Coal miner's daughter.
This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.
How are you, kid?
I'm doing great today. I got having a fun time. My daughter is actually engineering with us today along with Latif. So you definitely made the criteria to make my show, because my show is about bringing interesting people on. And you are interesting, very interesting. So let's talk about the beginning. Let's talk about you from West Virginia. So tell me, you grew up in West Virginia. Your family from West Virginia?
I grew up with a rather large family. My mother is one of 9 and my father is one of 8.
Oh, okay.
So I have a lot of cousins and a lot of family. My mother's family was coal miners. My grandfather, both of my grandfathers were coal miners. My dad was a coal miner, and my uncles.
Oh,
And I decided to be a coal miner
true coal miner's daughter.
and a coal miner.
And a coal. First, let's talk about Virginia itself, because in there you were in the rural area of Virginia growing
Yeah,
up.
West Virginia. I'm from southern West Virginia, from McDowell County. Everybody down there we talk about my county.
Okay.
So I'm from McDowell County, West Virginia, and Welch was the county seat.
Okay.
So growing up, my dad worked in the coal mines. My mom stayed home until all of us went to school, and then she became a supervisor for the Department of Welfare.
Really?
So one of the first black women to be in that position, and I remember that. I saw her go back to school to finish her education to get that promotion to supervision. So I remember that. My dad was the first black fire boss for Olga Coal Company.
Okay.
A fire boss is the first person that goes into the mine to read the gas, to see if there's any gas in the mine. So that was his job. He would go in first.
Jeez. That's a dangerous job.
It's a very dangerous job because they used to send a bird in.
Wow.
That's where you hear the canary. Senator Sherrod Brown talks about the canary. They would send a bird in, and if the bird flew back out, then the gas was not too high for you to be able to breathe.
Wow.
If the bird didn't come back out, they didn't go
They
in.
didn't go in. Wow.
Right.
Now, you know that. And so I can imagine they had some kind of technology or something. It wasn't, they didn't base it based off whether he
when
walked
we're
out,
talking
right?
about using the bird, that was
Years
ago before they became unionized and
Okay.
OSHA came in with safety
Gotcha.
provisions.
Gotcha.
After that, you had a methane gas reader.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your parents and everyone in this town, I imagine, or in the area, was basically coal miners. That's
a
what
lot
the
of
thing.
us were coal miners.
That's what it was. So tell me, what is coal mining? For a city guy like myself who just kind of know, give us what is a coal miner? Or what was a coal miner? Because I guess you're not doing that anymore.
I'm not doing it anymore. But, my first job that I had, I was the roofing helper. You have a person that goes in and they use rebar, and you have these metal plates they call a pancake.
Okay.
And it's like a 12 by 12 plate, and it has a hole where you drive the rebar through and you pin it to the top
Okay.
to help support the top of the mines. So that was my first job. After he would do that, then we had to load what we call rock dust, which is crushed limestone, into the machine, and then we would blow it on the walls. That keeps the coal dust down.
Wow.
So that was my first job. I was a roofing helper.
That whole thing just seems dirty as heck, which I know it is, but it also seems so dangerous because again, you're at a point where you building the tunnel out to go for the guys to work in, correct?
You're correct. Or they've already cut the coal, and they leave pillars of coal, but then you still use the rebar in between to support the roof after it's been pulled out.
Wow.
The thing that you have to be cautious of when you're in high coal, like the coal we were in, is mountain bumps.
Okay.
Because where they pulled out so much of the foundation, it bumps, it drops, it shifts.
Okay.
And when it shifts, the coal will shoot out at you.
Wow. So I heard you on one program you were talking about. You said there were two types of ways. I think you were registered to do it two types of ways. You said one was where you went down in a shaft, I guess.
That was the second mine I worked in.
Okay.
The first mine I worked in was a drift mouth, so you would ride a buggy all the way in. The second mine that I worked in had a shaft, and it's like an elevator. It takes you down, and then you get in your buggy and you drive back to your work location.
And just the only light is the light on your head.
Yes, they have some lights along in the beginning where you pick up your buggy, but your light is on your head.
Wow.
And if you don't get a battery pack that's charged, your light will go out.
And you down there.
And you're down there, you can't see. So when you come in from your shift, you take your battery pack back.
Okay.
It's a rechargeable, and you stick it on there so that it'll be charged up for the next shift.
And how long was the shift? 8 hours?
8 hours.
You was down there. Wow. Ate lunch down there, everything.
You
Wow.
take your lunch bucket in.
And how long did you do that?
Oh, a couple of years, 2.5 years or so,
Then it was
before we started to get laid off.
it was time to go. What made you move to? What made you pick Columbus?
Well, I picked Columbus because my grandmother lived there. I had 3 uncles there. I had friends that I knew had moved to Columbus. So I just picked Columbus because it was close.
Okay. And then
We don't know anything in West Virginia but reading, writing, and Route 23.
So it was a whole new experience.
Yes.
Well, Columbus isn't a bad place to go for a new experience, I guess, to start off because it was a growing city and everything at that
Yeah,
time.
it's still growing.
Yeah. So when you got to Columbus, you decided, hey, it's time for me to. What made you pick insurance? I saw.
Well, I didn't initially because, being a blue-collar girl,
Right.
I didn't finish school. I started at Bluefield State College, and I dropped out and decided I'd go to work in mines because it paid more
Okay.
than going to school.
I got you. I understand.
So when I came, I had to go through some retraining. So I went to the CETA program. I learned how to do data entry and key punch.
Okay.
And that's how I got my job with Xerox and OCLC and Nationwide.
And then you had decided that insurance was your thing.
Well, someone referred me, told me that Mr. Tyler was looking for an office manager, and I took the job. And I worked for him for about 2.5 years. He was one of the few Black-owned insurance businesses in Columbus, and the first Black to own an insurance agency with a major company.
And how well did your insurance company do? Then you decided to open your own in.
I started my own business. I also went to a major insurance company and had a multi-line insurance agency. So I could write all types of insurance. I did that for 16 years.
Okay. I was doing my little research and I saw that you say you pivoted because of the Series 6 and the licensing requirements.
And
so,
partially
yeah.
because in the late 90s, the insurance companies were reorganizing and restructuring and restructuring how your commission structure went.
Right.
So I had a contract, and the contract was not as lucrative as it had been. So I decided to pivot.
Okay.
That was one reason. The other reason was we were moving to doing the variable insurance annuities, and I really didn't want to do a Series 6
Okay.
or
Right.
7.
Right. And so you decided to go back to school. So you went to community
Back to
college.
school.
Yeah. And so.
I was doing that while I was still had my agency.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right before they made the contract switch, I decided, I better go back and finish my education because I might not want to stay here.
Exactly. And that experience, you decided after that, how was going to school back then? Because you're a little older now, and you decide I'm going back, and you got your business. You have any kids by then? Mm-hmm. All right. And so now you family, and you're trying to pull that off. Was that a struggle?
That was a struggle, but I would go to school at Columbus State sometime and take 7 o'clock in the morning classes.
Wow.
Before work. And then on the weekends, I would take classes. So I was doing a multitude of things at the same time.
So what pushed you towards the legal round? What made you decide? Because we'll fast for a little bit, because then you say, I get through that, and you got your BA, and you decide I want to move. What made you jump into saying I want to go do legal law?
I really felt led to do the law. I really felt led to do the law, and everyone kept saying, you'd be a great lawyer, and I never thought about it. But when I graduated from law school, my sister said my mother always said that one of us would be a lawyer. So she just basically prophetically spoke over our lives the type of careers that we would have. And I never thought it would be me because my sister was the academic.
Okay.
She loved school.
Right.
I was not the one that loved school. And that additional 3 years was not appealing to me. But it has been the best career that I've ever had. I knew that's where I belonged when I got there.
Do you think you were a good student? You say you didn't like school. Was you a good student in school?
Oh, absolutely, because we could not be anything else in our house.
So you couldn't help up be a good student.
No, it was one of those things you didn't bring in below a certain grade. That didn't happen at our house.
Or you'd be still in that coal mine.
I'd probably still been in my house.
That's cool.
Because our parents had goals for us.
Okay.
And they made sure that you were going to have the education to pursue it. So they were not happy when I went to the coal mines.
No, I can imagine.
That's not the purpose that they had designed for
And I'm afraid
us.
your dad didn't want to see you there.
No.
I know your dad didn't want to see you down there.
No.
So did your dad get the chance to see you become a judge?
He did. My mother passed away many years before, but my dad was able to see this.
But she knew you became a lawyer.
No, she
No,
wasn't
she didn't
able
even
to
get see you
it.
become a lawyer. Oh, man.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, sometimes you miss some things when you delay.
I heard you talked about that. You talked about if one thing you could tell your 20-year-old self is you would have wished you'd have did it sooner. Yeah. And a lot of people that way, sometimes you think back like, hey, I really wish I could have finished this out early. And that's one of my things. My kids always tell me that. They say, what do you think you would have did different? I said, I think I would have pursued my education. I would have took it a hell of a lot serious. Knowing what I know now, yes, I would have took it a lot serious. So.
Well, because we fought so hard to get the education. And it really was impactful for me because Brown versus Board of Education happened in the mid-50s. But in West Virginia, they did not desegregate schools till the mid-60s.
Right.
So I actually started at Welch Dunbar, which was a black school, and then we integrated to Welch Elementary.
That was almost
And
like
Welch High School.
Juneteenth, if your own type of Juneteenth.
Yeah, so the law has been impactful in my life because of Brown versus Board of Education in particular, and then some of the other cases that led to blacks being able to be admitted to the practice of law. There were times where black could not even attend law school.
Right.
And it, particularly black women. So when black men got in before
black women did. So let's talk about you becoming a judge, right? So you get your degree. Oh, before I get there, because one of the things I like about judges, and me personally, is I like the ones that are public defenders first, then become judge. And I know there's two sides of that, but
And
I
think
really
might
like
have
the
been-
public defenders.
I might have been one of the first judges that have been a public defender that got elected. The majority of the judges come from the prosecutor's office.
Correct.
So I did my internship all through law school with the public defender's office and then worked for them for a short time. Then I asked my husband, I said, I want to quit and start my own practice.
Yes, that's right. I forgot to add that.
Yes.
You had your own practice as well. How long did you do your own practice?
8 years.
8 years. Wow. And what did you mainly do when you was doing your practice?
Criminal, domestic, juvenile, and probate.
Same stuff you went on to
And
become
I
a
did
judge?
some appellate work.
So how you become a judge? You know, somebody decided, hey, we think you'll be a good judge and we want to get behind you, or you just decided, I want to
Actually-
be judge.
Actually, I ran as an independent the first time.
Really?
I
Okay.
did.
All right.
We circulated petitions. To be an independent, you have to have 1% or whatever.
Yeah, a lot more signatures.
Whatever the
Right.
last
Election
major
was.
election was.
Exactly.
So we had to have 3,485 ballot signatures
Wow. Versus,
versus 50
Wow.
if you're endorsed by a party.
wow. Well, you put some work in.
Yes, we did.
Y'all put some work in.
Yes, we did. We turned in 6,600 and
Whoa.
some signatures.
Really?
Yes. We did.
And you won.
And I won.
And you became a juvenile.
Juvenile and domestic in Franklin County is a combined
It's a combined court. Because I kept hearing you say that too, and I kind of figured that out because it's separate up
'cause
here.
It's separate.
Yeah.
Yes. But we're a combined court there.
So that means you must have a heavy docket.
When I first got to domestic and juvenile court, we had over 8,000 cases assigned to us individually. Then in 2018, they added a judge, so that took it down in the 7,000s. And then in 20, they added another judge, which
Okay.
took it down in the 6,000, a little over 6,000 range.
How many African American judges is in Franklin County?
I think we currently have 13 or 14
Out of how many?
out of out of 40.
Okay. It's still a better percentage than we have here in Cuyahoga County. We have a very low number of judges. African American male is
Particularly
even
on your general division.
exactly. It's
You
even
only
less.
have 3 out of 34.
Exactly. That's a terrible number to be a large county like we are.
Well, you have to run countywide if you run for the Court of Common Pleas or
Yes.
the appellate court.
Yeah, but y'all do the same thing, and it seems like you
We
guys
have
are pulling
over-
it off.
Yeah, we have over 800,000 registered voters in Franklin County.
And it seems like we just can't seem to pull this off for some reason. We try
I
and
didn't know
try,
anybody was running.
but it seems like we have an issue of trying to get African American males, especially, on the bench here. So it's been a struggle for us for a while. And it seems like you say your first time out, you doubled how many signatures you needed. You got on the ballot, and you became a juvenile. How long did you serve in that position?
8 years,
8 years.
8.5.
Yeah. And what were some of the challenges you find out as a juvenile judge with these young folks today and the crime that's going on? I know up here we're really having some issues, and the guns and the violence that's going on with them. How is it in Columbus?
I think Columbus surpassed Cleveland last year with the murder rate.
Really?
Yes, we had over 200 murders last year. A lot of them between the victims between the age of 18 and 24. A large percentage were. And then there was about 12%, I believe, that were between 12 and 17.
Wow.
So there were a lot last year.
And you finding that most of the crimes are dealing with guns?
Mostly. A lot of gun crimes.
And that's one of the things that I was trying to, I saw that the governor just passed some legislation to now make it so that you don't need a concealed carry, and
That means you don't need any training.
you don't need any training.
Just
And
buy a gun.
Just buy a gun. And right now everybody has a gun, and so it just made it even worse. And I was talking to Judge Michael Ryan. He's a juvenile judge here, and one of the things we were talking about was, with the fact that everybody has guns, is that these young folks are just like, when they stealing them and just getting them from all over the place, because the fact that there's no training, there's no real, so people are buying them, not putting them properly away, not having them where they were, and so therefore people are getting their hands on them, especially
I find
young
it
kids.
very interesting because in West Virginia we all have weapons too, but they hunted.
They hunted, right?
They hunted, and everybody had a gun, but we knew not to touch it.
Right, exactly. Well,
Or they would take you out and they would show you how to use it.
right. But people, and I don't know why, but up here is just really, really, the violence is just, everybody's on 100 for some reason these days. So,
Well, there were a lot of reasons to be. When you think about what happened with COVID, it displaced so many people out of the workforce, particularly women. And in our community right now, I think it's about 72% of single household parenting. And when you think about losing your job, you think about everyone being quarantined in a home. And if it's not a 3,400 square foot home,
Right.
you don't have any place to go.
Right.
You're on top of each other. You're stressed about bills. The children weren't able to get computers to go to school. There were a lot of things that were going on through COVID that I believe exacerbated the situations for Black community in particular. Because if you know, we're always the hardest hit.
correct.
We were the essential employees with no daycare.
Correct. That's correct. And it affected everything.
It affected
It
everything.
affected education wise. And my son is a teacher, substitute teacher at one of the schools here, and he's teaching math at the class. And
Bless him.
And there's a whole nother story on that, because he didn't want to do it himself, but he ended up subbing, and that's his class. But he said that the class that he's teaching is like an online math class that he's trying to teach these kids, but they're not catching on to it, or they're having issues getting to understand
You
it.
don't have the foundation.
But check this out. What he said was that the teachers came up to him and said, now he's doing ninth graders. And he told them that these are not really ninth graders. They're really sixth graders, because these are the kids who stayed at home because of COVID, didn't have to come to school because of COVID, did that online stuff. So some of them did it, some of them didn't. The parenting was in there, trying to do it. So even their level of education, everything has taken it's affected. Take a step back. So so now he said, no, they're not ninth graders in the fact that they're doing introductory to algebra or doing algebra. They ninth graders that's really sixth graders or
Learning
seventh grade
geometry.
that's should be learning geometry, and they failing at it. So yes, you're right in the fact that it affected everything.
I think the way that we teach now is so different than when we were being taught. And all children are not children that can learn as an auditory function. Some children are hands-on. So they need to see. I know you remember what an abacus is.
Correct.
They need to see it.
Right.
They need to be able to touch it. They need to move the parts. And because we've become so high tech, we've lost the basics of teaching.
It brings me back to something also you said, was that in law, that you like to be able to have people to kind of understand what's going on versus the law stepping in to get them to have to make the decision. You want to go in a little bit about what you meant by that?
Well, what I meant by that, because we had such a large docket, and I don't know the stats up here, but in Franklin County, over 60% of the people coming through our court were representing themselves. So when you're representing yourself and you have not had the legal training, you don't understand the process. A lot of our misunderstanding would come from not knowing the process. So a lot of times I would just bring them into court, sit them down and say, this is the process. But if you can reach an agreement, and I was a certified domestic mediator as well.
Okay.
So I would let each side talk, and I would take notes while they talked. And then I would point out the things that they agreed upon and say, but these are the things that you don't agree. Is that correct? So then we would talk through why they didn't agree. And you would find that sometimes it wasn't that they didn't agree.
Okay.
They just didn't know how to get it on paper. So we came up with some different things while I was in the court. When I first went to the court, our model visitation for a father coming into the court was every other weekend and Wednesday evening.
Okay.
So I did not think that was equitable.
Okay.
So we started talking about it. The next thing we know, we came up with other models. You should not come into the court, and particularly as a married person, and lose 50% of your rights overnight because you're equal parents coming in.
Correct.
So we came up with different model rules for visitation and parenting time that were more equitable and gave the child more time with both parents.
Gotcha.
So unless there's a reason that you should not parent your children, you should be able to help parent your children. So those were some of the things that we work with. Why don't you think he should have 2 nights a week? What are your reasons? Because we do what's in the best interest of the child, not what's in the best interest of the parents. So we began to work through those things. If they can't reach an agreement, then you have a trial and the court has to make a decision. But if they can reach an agreement and it's something that they fashion, they're more likely to abide by it than if you tell them what to do.
Because
they're grown.
Yeah, and the law steps in. Like you say, sometimes people get it better versus, because the law is the law. People seem to take it better if they kind of understand it coming from that way versus the law, because it's so black and white, and sometimes it feel like there's no feeling in it. There's nothing in it, and it's just that. And that's when you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah, but a family court is a court of equity. It's the one court where they're supposed to do what's right.
Correct.
The law is there as a guide, but you have more discretion in family court to fashion a decision.
So we're going to go to this question, and I want to ask you, give me something that you just can't understand what people are doing today, that you just look at and you go, I just don't understand why they doing that. One of my guests told me he can't understand how people can tell a lie and people can just know it's a lie and still want to go with that. And so I don't understand how you know that this person is lying, but you just still want to continue to believe that. So, Judge, over all these trials and tribulations and things you done been through and accomplishments, you done seen a lot. You've been a juvenile judge and domestic judge and now appellate judge. Tell me something you don't understand.
I think I don't understand why there's so much strife between people. People are just angry for no reason. I just don't understand that. I don't get up angry every day.
Right.
So I don't understand people that get up angry.
Right. It happens. They have bad days, bad life.
Yeah, but they have bad day every day. I mean, come on, man. You got to change your mindset. You
Something they doing wrong.
Something.
Right.
I don't understand the level of hatred that's in the world. I don't understand.
Oh, and that's a good one because there's a lot of that going on right now.
Oh, absolutely.
In all aspects, So I really don't understand that at all. So we're going to move on to our next question. So you become an appellate court judge.
I did.
How'd that happen?
Well, thank goodness in Ohio we do get elected. Because you don't see a lot of black judges getting appointed
not
in
at
the
all.
state of Ohio.
Not at all.
We're normally in the wrong party.
Actually, you don't see none, really. Well, let me get that. There are very few, and you got to be in the other party is also.
Yes.
But up in Cuyahoga County, if you're in that party, you're only there temporarily.
Yes.
So it's really not even worth it. I know some.
Yeah, we're having some of those same things in Franklin County. We have a vacancy on our court right now that hasn't been filled yet.
So did you have to run for that seat, or did you
did.
get? Well, we knew you had to run. Was it as tough as the first race, or easier?
It was probably tougher because I ran against a 3-term incumbent.
Oh, okay. And they were Republican.
Yes.
Big name in Columbus.
Yeah, she had been a judge for 28
Really?
years, something of that nature.
Wow. How long was she on the appellate bench?
18 years.
Wow. Really?
She had been a municipal court judge, a common pleas court, and appellate court judge.
Wow. And you
Had
went.
never lost.
Wow. And so how did that race go? What did you get out of that race? Was it
That was a tough race. It was during the COVID.
really?
We had to do all of our campaigning through Zoom. I did
I
so
remember that.
many
Yeah.
things through Zoom. Not too much in person. I did go out to the early vote center in person, but not much in person at all because in March of 2020, we shut down the world in
Right.
Ohio.
Correct.
So yes, it was a very different race than what I'm used to doing because I'm very grassroots and like going through the communities, but did it all by Zoom.
So let's talk about, now we can get into some stuff here about this justice reform and stuff like that. How do you feel about justice reform that's going on? Do you have any opinion on that, or can you make an opinion on justice reform?
Well, I can tell you some of the things that were reformed while I was in domestic and juvenile court.
Okay.
One of the things I served, Chief Justice O'Connor appointed me to the Juvenile Sentencing Commission.
Okay.
And through that commission and other organizations that I work on, we were able to stop shackling juveniles in court. You know, the law says that you can't shackle adults when they're in court in trial, so that there's no bias perceived by the jury.
Right.
But we were seeing that juveniles were still being brought to court shackled, still being brought to court in their jail clothes. So we pushed to get that changed because even though people say that they're able to look beyond the fact that you have on shackles and jail clothes and make a determination, the psychology suggests that if I see you in shackles, I'll leave you in shackles.
Correct. Right.
So we moved away from shackling juveniles. The next thing that I did, I kept seeing men and women coming through the court who did not have employment but owed child support. So I started a program called the Compass Program, where I brought community providers to the court and actually brought men and women to the court to seek jobs, job training, get their license corrected with the BMV if it was at all possible. If it's suspended by child support, we could take care of it, getting your license back so you could drive to and from work.
Correct.
That's something I don't understand. Why they passed
Right.
a law
There
to
you-
take
you know what,
a
that-
driver's license
you know what, there's a
from
very
people
good
that
one.
had to go to work.
Yeah, that's a very good
They
one.
also were suspending professional licenses.
Exactly.
They could take your law license. They could take your
and-
ability to practice medicine.
I couldn't
if you
understand
were
that.
behind in your child support. Now that's something I didn't understand.
I can't understand that.
And I
either.
don't understand that system that continues to penalize you for not having money. It's no more than a debtor's prison issue. And it has become the new pipeline for men to prison. Because if you miss your child support for over 26 consecutive weeks,
Right.
you can be indicted as a felon. And a lot of people don't know that. So it's another way that's leading people into the prison system. People need to be employed. People need opportunities for equal employment, equal pay. So that was one of the things that I started while I was there as well. So I tried to use the courtroom that I had and the seat that I had to make things better for the people in the community.
What about this Innocence Project? I had Mayor Cranley on the program, and we talked about the Innocence Project and the things that he's doing. Have you had any experience working with them or know about what they're got going?
I do know what they're doing. I did not work with them, but one of I've never forgotten this. When I was in private practice, there were two men in Columbus. Both of them were freed through the Innocence Project, and one of them died within 6 months of getting out of prison.
Wow.
And I was representing his wife in probate court.
Okay.
And I remember that he did not live long. So we often see the ones that actually come out that are alive. But how many people actually die in prison that were innocent?
Correct.
Those are statistics that are not measured.
Ah, that's really deep. And I like you say, that's not measured, and you never know what that looks like.
No, you don't know what it looks like because they're still saying they're innocent, but nobody has been able to prove their innocence yet. But great program because we do know that we get it wrong sometimes. Juries do get it wrong. A lot of times, if you're relying on a person to identify a perpetrator, they probably get it wrong, especially if it's cross racial boundaries. Those face-to-face eyewitness identifications have been found to be not as credible as people thought they were, because you're in a stressful situation. If you're from a different race, you're not good with facial features. You're not good with skin tones. There's so many different things that come into play with eyewitness identification that they really have to work to get collateral evidence for that prosecution.
Well, you heard about this program. They're doing it up here. I had a gentleman on my program, Cecil Lipkin. He's with the United Black Fund, and they're working with a project to call it, I think, a no bail project program, where they pay actually to bail for people. If you were to go in front of a judge and you needed help getting out of jail, because their philosophy is that bail shouldn't be based off of how much money you make. There's certain people who can go to jail and get out because they can afford it. And we got a lot of people in jail because they can't get $500. And back to your point, they barely have a job. They get in some trouble. They're locked up in jail. They can't afford to, even if it's $1,000. $1,000 can set some people back, if you don't have it. $1,000, and now you're sitting in jail trying to get somebody to get you out. You lose your job that you had.
You lose your apartment.
You lose your apartment. You lose everything.
You lose your parenting time with your children.
Exactly.
You lose. I think we just had an incident in Franklin County. I think the gentleman was found not guilty after sitting in jail for over 2 years awaiting trial.
Wow.
You can't get that back.
Can't get that back. And I think it's important. And so, as an appellate court judge, and you one of the people who get to go ahead and look at some of these cases that come back in front of you that people are appealing, what are you seeing are some of the trends that you think are coming through the court these days?
Well, we haven't seen too many criminal cases because they haven't had criminal trials. We're seeing civil cases, workers' compensation cases, lawsuits against the state of Ohio, lawsuits against each other over property, over different rights. So we're seeing mostly civil cases right now.
All right, so now let's talk about the big seat. You want to put the big robe on and go downstate, and why you want to do that?
Well, this seat is really critical at this time. If you've been watching the paper at all, the impact of the Supreme Court on redistricting,
Really?
the impact on the Supreme Court on cases that come forth where someone's had a non-physical trauma. Bail and bond reform, a case just came out of the Supreme Court where the court held that you could not place a bond for imprisonment. The purpose of bond is for you to make sure that the gentleman or the woman returns to court. So that's the purpose of bond. So they just issued a decision on that, finding that a bond was unreasonable. So the court has a tremendous power that needs to be exercised so that we have equality and equity, that we're treated fairly and justly, and our vote is not diluted, that we are a separate and equal branch of government to the legislature and to the executive branch. And the law is the check and balance to make sure that those two branches don't exceed their scope of responsibility either.
Now, in doing that, you're going to be faced with some really tough challenges and some of the tough questions. I do know that, again, was talking to Judge Ryan, he mentioned that Justice Donnelly was thinking about something where judges can kind of put in their rulings of sentencing of different crimes, so that somewhat everybody can kind of.
Now Justice Donnelly did not start the sentencing database. Chief Justice O'Connor did.
O'Connor did. Okay.
And Justice Donnelly has been taking that issue up because I was on one of her committees for that as well.
So
she's been working on that, and she wanted to see it implemented before she leaves the court.
All right, and so they're still working on that
Yes,
particular document.
they got a few judges that would agree to volunteer to do those statistics. It's a statistic that is not normally kept, but it will allow them to look at the background of the defendant, to look at the crime that the defendant either committed or pled guilty to look at prior criminal convictions, to look at whether or not that person's been successful on probation or whatever before, and determine whether judges are sentencing across the board, all races, the same way. So it's to measure the sentencing.
Correct.
And the most recent case I can think of was here in Cuyahoga County, where we had a Caucasian woman that embezzled over $250,000.
Right.
And an African American woman that embezzled around $50,000.
Yeah, right.
The Caucasian woman took all of her retirement and paid her money back, and was able to plead down to an F3. The black woman pled to an F3, but she was only able to pay back, I think, $5,000 of restitution. And she got 18 months in prison, while the Caucasian woman got 24 months of probation.
Correct.
So that would be something that the database would track. Because there's no reason, neither of them had a criminal background, neither of them they were both stable in the community, they were similarly situated, and in fact, the Caucasian woman was charged with a F2 and pled down to an F3.
Wow.
The black woman was charged with an F3 and pled to an F3. I don't think she was even offered to a lesser included offense.
Wow. No.
We need a sentencing database.
How do you feel about the death penalty and what's going on with the death penalty? I imagine that's going to come across.
I really can't talk about the death penalty. That's the law in Ohio right now.
That's good. Anything you can, just let me know. I didn't. I wondered about that.
That's the law in Ohio right now.
That's the law in Ohio.
I don't know that a lot of counties are actually using the death penalty because it's a very expensive prosecution. It's very expensive to prosecute a death penalty case.
Really?
Because after you have the trial, then you have the penalty phase, which is similar to a trial, where they have to present evidence on why the person should be put to death and not be given life without parole or some other sentence. So there's one phase for the trial, then you have another penalty phase.
So why does it take so long to kill somebody?
Because they have the right to appeal.
I mean, it seems like when you give them the death penalty, isn't that it?
That's not it. They have the right to an appeal.
I mean, the appeal takes like forever, though, don't it?
How many times have we been wrong?
That's what I'm saying. Don't have it. I'm not saying you should do it, and I'm just saying don't have it. You shouldn't have the death penalty. Put everybody in prison for life, and then if you had an opportunity because there was something wrong, you can get out. Why even have it? If you're gonna sentence somebody to death and they on death row for 15 years, I mean, right?
Well, but you still have the right to go through the process.
Oh no, I agree.
Because a lot of people have asked me, why would you be a criminal defense attorney? Because we have to have the process.
Yeah.
Everyone is entitled to due process of law.
Right.
And if we don't abide by due process of law, we can become just as barbaric as any other society. Everyone has a right to have a defense. Everyone has a right to be heard in court. And I think that we need to make sure that happens.
I agree with you. I'm not an opponent for it. I just always wondered, just like when they do that, it seems like they be just on death row forever, And then there's some of the guys who I see who are guilty, and they they get sentenced to death, and it seemed like they like really broken up about it. And it seemed like, well, would you rather spend your rest of your life in jail? I guess they say, yeah, I'd rather spend the rest of my life in jail than to, know that I'm going to die at a certain date. Maybe that's just mentally crazy on the end. I don't know. So
I don't either.
That's
But
something I don't
it's
understand.
the law in Ohio as of right now.
Yeah. I just don't
I don't
understand
think
it.
anybody's been put to death lately because they're trying to find a more humane way to do it.
I think the last time they did it, it didn't work right or something
And
like that.
someone got,
Yeah, it went pretty bad. So yeah. All right. So, Judge, what makes you think you're going to be a very good Supreme Court justice? I think you would be good because of all your experience and everything. And again, we kind of glossed through your road to success to where you are, because there's a whole lot of stuff in between that. But tell me, why you think you're going to be a very good Supreme Court justice?
I'm balanced. I believe that the law applies equally to everyone. It is very serious. It is the highest court for the state. It's the court of last resort. And the importance of the court has really been demonstrated lately. The importance of being an independent court, independent of legislature, independent of the executive branch. And it's never been more critical than it is right now. We're going through redistricting right now, and we've seen the impact of the court. Redistricting, if they do not do a map by agreement, will come back up in 4 years. So whoever you elect in 22 and whoever you elect or re-elect in 24 will be there 4 years from now to make sure that this map that gets drawn for the next 10 years will be a map that does not dilute the vote of the voters of Franklin, of the state of Ohio. We want to pick our representatives. We don't want our representatives to pick us.
Correct.
And so it's really imperative that we have someone on the court with a variety of experience that has the life experiences of the people. I'm a third generation coal miner, union member. I had to work my way through school into another career. I understand what it's like for the average working parent to know that I've got to make the ends meet for my child, but I need to get this education so that I can make things better. Because if I don't get a better education, I'll never be able to make things better.
Exactly.
So I understand what the people are needing because I am the people.
Right.
I'm in touch with my community. I'm in touch with the majority of the state of Ohio. I'm not the elite. I'm not the elite. I didn't come here with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I had to work hard, and I understand that anyone that's coming to that court is in a crisis situation, and they need someone there that understands them and gives empathy and a voice that they can be heard.
That's really, really good. And that's why I say I know why you'll be good. And that's exactly what I say, is because you are, your makeup and how you got there. Like you say, you worked hard to get there. And it was by choice. Like you said, it wasn't that I had some crazy situation that made me, I made the decisions that I wanted to make, even deciding where I wanted to be a coal miner or not. There was a decision you made. I didn't like it. I moved on to something else. I did that for a little while. It was time to make another decision. You made that decision and you move on. So that right there, and been successful along the way, which is the best part about it.
The other reason is I believe that our children need to see someone that looks like them. And not only our children, but any litigant that comes into the court, if they don't see anyone that looks like them,
Correct.
that might have had their experiences, then they're not going to have a feeling that they're going to be fairly and equitably heard. And, I can identify with the Southerner. I can identify with the person that has completed college and moved into a suburban neighborhood. I can identify with the inner city person. I can identify with the union worker. I can identify with the single parent. I can identify because I've been through all of those things. So I am the perfect person to hear your case when you come before me, because I can identify.
Well, I tell you, if we can't get you to be judge, we damn sure need to make you governor or something. Sound like hell. You definitely ready for something. You press all the buttons and you check all the boxes for real. And that's not joking. I mean, honestly, like you said, you check all those boxes, and it's been a while since we had someone who can run on that type of record, especially being African American. From our position is really huge. So I want to be the first to let you know we're going to do everything we can to help you out and to make sure you're successful. I want you to now take this opportunity to look in this camera right there, and you get to tell the people a little bit about how they can get involved and help you spread this message all around Ohio, because it's a big state. There's a lot of places you need to go. There's a lot of people you need to talk to. So I want to make sure you give them how they can get in contact with your campaign, how they can get your website, and anything you want to say. The camera's yours.
Well, I am Teri Jameson. I want to be justice number 163, and I want you to remember that number. And I want you to remember, since Ohio was founded, there have only been 4 minority justices on that court, 2 men and 2 women, throughout the history of Ohio. You can reach me at votejudgejameson.com. You can sign up to be on our email list. You can sign up to volunteer. You can donate. We are taking any donation, no matter how small or how large, because I'm working to represent you on the court. You can also email me at Jameson, Jamison, the number 4, judge at gmail.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, because I have a message, and I believe that you are the recipient for the message. We need someone on the court that represents us and will represent us fairly, equitably, and judge us with empathy. And I am that person. I am Judge Teri Jameson.
So thanks again, Judge, for being on our show. We want to let everybody know that all her information, her website, her contact information will be in the link in our comments section. So look on the bottom of our comments. You'll be able to link right into her campaign and be able to get as much information as you can on the judge. Again, Judge, I want to thank you for coming out to our show.
Thank you.